Hello, all, and welcome to this Friday afternoon beer review. I probably won't be able to do a beer review next week. I'm going to be very busy next week. I might squeeze one in if I can get a growler fill, but I have many things to do next week, including the fact that I forgot to go and pick up my mail yesterday, which means my mailbox is probably exploding down in Kailua. And I really just ought to go and switch my P.O. box. It doesn't make much sense for me to have one in Kailua, but I'm a very lazy man. And I also like pretending I still live on the windward side. So anyways, what are we reviewing tonight? This afternoon? We are reviewing Kona Brewing's limited series Hibiscus Brut IPA. This is 8.2 ABV, so fairly high up there, and 40 IBU, so about mid-bitter. Just read the back here. Find your aloha with this bubbly and bright Brut IPA with real hibiscus. One life, right? Now, I was actually really surprised when I saw this for sale because I believe like less than 8 months ago or so, maybe around the beginning of spring, it was released as a limited release, spring winter maybe, so maybe about a year ago. It was done as a limited release, and I find it very interesting that they brought it back because the Brut IPA as a style is one that kind of came and went. It was like it just in 2017 and 2018 it just exploded and was all over the place, and then by 2020 it was really hard to find. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Brut IPAs um, are fairly one-dimensional as a style, in that they are ridiculously clean due to using the champagne yeast, and often pretty much bone dry, leaving it to be leaving it all up to the hops. And it there wasn't as much interplay in between the malts and the hops there, especially since they were using fairly neutral hops, fairly neutral malts like crystal malts and pilsner malts and whatnot. But in any case, let's get to this. I'm going to be pouring this into a pilsner glass because Brut IPAs are benefited from that, I think, aesthetically. Probably going to be some talking in the background now. That's okay. So, very well carbonated. A yellowish orange, very clear. Doesn't seem like it, but that's just because there's no backlight. Extremely well carbonated, with a fizzy to frothy off-white head. Redolent of hibiscus juice and fruity hops. Hints of dank. And not much to show for malts. It smells sweet, but that could just be the hops. So, very crisp and bracing up front. Bitter hop finish. Bitterness has its The taste has the most dimensionality for a brief flash in the mids before it sort of recedes to a sort of zesty bitterness in the long finish. Some sweetness in the mids to first part of the finish, but mostly finishes bone dry. Not too much hibiscus. It's sort of there throughout, but it's kind of underneath the hopping. Fairly bracing. And you kind of run into, some kind of silent. And that's because you kind of run into the problem that a lot of the Brut IPAs have. Once you get past that initial hop bitterness and aromatics, and well, whatever adjuncts they have to this. So at least this is hibiscus to go and add a little bit of flavor dimensionality, smell dimensionality to it, okay, dimensionality. There's not much there. In that regard, Brut IPAs are sort of like if you tried to go and make an American style lager that just kind of focused, on IPA, the core essentials of the IPA, which is bitterness and either floral or piney or fruity hop aromatics. But not too much going on palate. And like I said, at 8 point, this doesn't even drink like an 8.2. It feels a heck of a lot lighter. It's refreshing, I'll give it that, though you probably wouldn't want to go and pound too many 8.2s. Certainly, I'm going to need to cook some dinner after this. But like I said, you run into a problem with these Brut IPAs is that there's just not much to talk about. This one, at least with the addition of hibiscus, is somewhat different from the other two Brut IPAs I had in that brief flash where they were all over the place. And once you've had one Brut IPA, you've kind of had most of them, to tell the truth. And if that's something that's really up your alley, then that's great. I enjoyed them, but I found them also a little bit boring. As if one went and took, an IPA and pretty much removed the malt aspect of it and just sort of left the hops. And so, yeah, it's refreshing. It's, nothing bad about it. Brut IPAs are your jam. I don't think Brut IPAs were much of anybody's jam, which is why they're actually pretty hard to find now. Give this a shot. If you're looking for something that goes down easy but will go and kick like a mule, I suppose this would also be a jam too. Plus, Kona Brewing is probably the cheapest of the local beers. But anyways, At least as it's warming up, just an ever so slight juiciness is starting to form. Ever so slight. Kona Brewing, Brut IPA, Hibiscus Brut IPA. Give it a shot if you run into it. Unless you really enjoy Brut IPAs, I wouldn't go out of my way to seek it out. But, you know, it's worth a shot. That's a beer review for this afternoon, folks. Cheers.